Om Om Sada Siva Samarambha Shankaracharya Madhyama Asmadacharya Paryanta Vande Guru Parampara Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheswara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurum Paramanandam Vande Swananda Vigraham Yasya Sanidhyamadrena Chidanandayate Vapu. In the last class, we have already discussed about Uddiyana Bandha, especially verse number 76 and 77. So, after discussing this Uddiyana Bandha, next Bandha comes Chalandra Bandha. Let us read. Vadnati Sirojalam Nado Yati na Bhojalam Tato Jalandharo Bandha Kantha Dukho Ghanashanaha Jalandhare Krute Bandhe Kantha Sankocha Lakshane Na Piyusha Patantyagno Na Vayu Prakurpyati. Sorry. Hope you have text so far. Okay. So when you don't have text, please let me know so that we will provide you. So here he says, look, first is Uddiyana Bandha. So this through Uddiyana Bandha, when a person makes all these Vayu completely under control and making the prana Vayu to go up through Susumna, that's why it is called Uddiyana. It is not mere physical, also there are a lot of other activities too. Now he says, look, next to this called Jalandhara Bandha. So Jalandhara Bandha is very interesting because we say that in space, especially above throat region, the Amrutam remains. That's why this yogic concept to be explained. This Rahu and Ketu, the planet, the head was chopped. You know how it happened. So this Amrutam was suspended. The story goes. So you can Google it. Just I'm giving you the link. So how that each incident is connected to Yoga Shastra, that's all. And here he says what is to be done? That neck is the net of the body. That's why it is called Shirojalam. In fact, the neck is everything. That's why all the nadis And if you want to say all your arteries, veins, and everything becomes narrower in neck region. That's why the neck region becomes most important thing in life. In fact, when we were studying, they used to say, you know, that passing high school is like neck. Because once you pass high school, you can pass anything and everything those days, okay? Nowadays, don't ask me. If you have passed high school, means you can pass anything, okay? That those days it was that tough. However, here it says, look, this Sirojalam that happens to be in where Kantadeshe. Now one need to lock it. Badnati. So how to, tie it down, how to create lock, and what will happen? He says, look, if you want to lock, of course, the process is very clear. Bring down the chin physically to the chest, through the desa. So Chivukam comes to Hrudadeshe, bringing down. And as you bring it down physically, you make some type of lock on your throat. Automatically it happens. But still one can breathe. Not that one cannot breathe. But here the trick is you have to completely lock because no breathing there. Not allowing. So both physically and also internally you need to lock. Once this is done, what will happen? So physically locking, the Vayu flow will be restricted. Internally locking, also Vayu flow will be stopped. But also you need to understand that logic behind what we call as astrally understanding. Through that, you can stop Amrutam to flow down. So there are three levels: physical, internal, or you can say external, internal instead of physical, external, internal, and astral with understanding. So when you don't allow the Nabhojalam to fall down, and where is this Nabhojalam is there? We call as that is in the skull, Kapalam, in the cavity of the skull, the brain, and which is nothing again. We say the Amrutam of Chandra, Chandramrutam. Many places, many way has been discussed. In fact, when you start practicing pranayama, you will start drinking nectar. In fact, your saliva becomes sweet. A lot of things happens. However, here it says, Tataha, thereafter, Jalandhara Bandha, this Jalandhara Bandha to be done what? He says, for what? Kantha Dukhogha Nasanaha. So that means here, this Jalandhara Bandha destroys Dukkham and also Rogam. All sort of pain and disease. And Especially he uses this word Jalandhre Krute Bandhe Kantha Sankocha Lakshane. So in the form of bringing down or closing this Kantha Desam, this throat region. Na Piyusha Patanti Agno. So definitely this is Chandramuta, Piyusham, will not fall where in Jatragni. And when it does not fall in Jatragni, there will be no leakage, there will be no damage at all. That's why na Vayuhu Prakupyati also. And because of which now the Pancha Pranas will not get imbalanced. So there won't be any sort of, jerk or any sort of difficulties with reference to this Pancha Prana. And of course, regarding this Jalandhara Bandha, different text talks differently. For example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika says, Kanthamakuchya Hudaye, Stapayat Chibukam Drudham, Bandho Jalandharaksyo Ayam, Jara Mrityu Vinasaka. Same concept, nothing much. So that bringing down the chin to the chest, Chibukam to Hrudam. And of course, Hrudaye, Drudham, you need to press it strongly. And when this is called as Jalandhara Bandha, what it does? Vinasaka, destroyer of both Jara. Jara means the geriatric problem, aging, old age, and Mrityu, the death. And of course, especially Yoga Tattva Upanishad also do talk very nicely. And different text talks elaborately, almost same way, little bit here and there differences. So somebody adds, for example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika says, Jara Mrityu Nivaraka. There it is being said, Mrityu Matanga Kesari. So some changes here and there, but the concept is one and same. So that means here it says, after Uddiyana Bandha, this Jalandhara Bandha also plays a major role. Then after Jalandhara Bandha, we have to talk about Mulabandha. Generally, people do talk or highlight Mulabandha, and which is popular all over. That is just physical aspect of Mulabandha. In fact, as I was looking at in different texts, especially if we look at that other texts, this is being called as also Yoni Bandha. Sometimes that Mula Bandha also is called as Yoni Bandha too. And why? Let us look at these two aspects first. That why Mula Bandha, that is popular nowadays, is just mere physical but not in real. And what is the reality? First of all, we say very common way that Mulabandha means that pulling your anus up. That is how everybody teaches. Still people will not able to understand. So that's why what we say, you practice Setubandhasana. So when you practice Setubandhasana, so in Setubandhasana, you will discover that automatically this Mulabandha has to happen. So there is a trick. So those who cannot or don't understand, they are so gross, we teach them Setubandhasana first. So being in Setubandhasana, then you can make out where and how to go about it. Number one. Now, once the person knows that what happens, now starts doing physically. That is how everybody practices. But in reality, actually the Mulabandha becomes complete, or that is called real Mulabandha, when physically you bring, especially bring your heel to the perineum, to the yonistanam, so that you push it. And of course, physically you can pull off the anus. But most importantly, that apana vayu is supposed to be pulled up to merge with prana. Then only Mulabandha is complete. Keeping this, let us read. Pashnibhagena sampitya yoni ma kunchayet gudam apana murdhamakrusya Mulabandho vidhiyate apana pranayor raikyat क्षयो मृत्युपुरीशयो युवा भवति वृद्धोपि सततं मूलबन्धनात्. He says, look, if the person keeps practicing Mulabandha regularly, continuously, Buddha api yuva bhavati. Even the person is old, becomes young. Okay? So now the best tip, so that all of you can look young. If you do not look young, at least mentally you can be young at least, okay? So the best tip is what? Vruddha api. Even though the person is a vruddha, old person becomes yuva, it becomes young. And not only that, he says beautifully that when a person does Mulabandha, both Mutra and Purishayoho Shaya Bhavati. So Mutra means urine, Purisha means that the shit. That also gets reduced. So that's why if a person does Mulabandha regularly, will not eat unnecessarily. That's why one of the rule of yogi is not supposed to eat too much. That's why general rule of any yogi, they make it very clear. Only when pittam time is there, they only eat that time. That's why I have seen also few yogis, those who eat only once in a day. They don't eat more. One meal, that's all. And body adjusts. It is like you can see, I see for myself, I can openly say to you that in Indian context, I can say here, South, North Indian context, suppose you decide to have 2 chapati. Absolutely no problem. First day you may feel uncomfortable, 2 chapati is perfect. Suppose someday food is good, or you become sick or health is bad. So then you increase 1. If you start taking 3 chapati for 1 week, after that to come down to 2 takes time. So mentally you feel that it is not sufficient, but in reality it was sufficient. You understand what I'm trying to say? Two chapati is sufficient enough. But because you have been acquainted now for three, even though few days back or 1 week back you used to have only two, now from three to two, you don't feel like coming back unless you see some bulging somewhere or something goes wrong. You understand? So how the mind works and the way we consume food, it is related to our psychological problem. I should not talk this language, but sometimes true. When I say psychological problem, as all of you know, those who had suffered in Second World War or here in India, that time the famine happened, or any family, some type of shortage of food was there some time or other, you will discover their gene, their generation, next generations, they will develop tope, they will develop the stomach, the fat will start increasing, whether you like it or not. Because the gene will start suggesting a food may not be there, eat. Why not eat more? You understand? And when gene starts suggesting, and once that becomes a habit, it becomes very difficult to get out of that unless there is some strong decision enough. So how this is actually a study, already they have confirmed this study. That's why I openly say this point. Same thing also. Anytime the food that we consume little more than necessary, it is connected to either gene or our past experience. So that we need to be very careful in this regard. And he says, look, when you start practicing Mulabandha, then definitely the food intake will come down. Whatever is required for body, you need to. Remember, if you are going for physical work, this and that, you need to eat, okay? So don't compromise, then you will be nowhere. So manage. That's why yogi means sitting one place, you can do it. Not, doing everything you don't want to. Then neither will be this side, nor that side, okay? So these are the side effects. So I am putting disclaimer. However, here says, look, what is to be done? He says, first, yonim akunchayat gudam sampidya prashni bhagena. So making the heel, bringing to the yonishtanam, press it, so that physically there is some type of pressure. That's why Siddhasana becomes very good. And once this is done, then you need to pull up the gudam. So pulling up gudam means pulling up the anus. There, while pulling up, akrusya urdham apanam urdham akrusya iti. So you need to also pull up the apana vayu. This is the trick. So once the apana vayu is being pulled up, then that is called as Mulabandha. Mulabandha vidhi ate. So until I am able to pull up apana vayu, that is not Mulabandha. This is the gross part. That is popular version of Mulabandha. The reality of Mulabandha is what? While doing external and internal, also I need to look at the astral part of it, the knowledge aspect of it. Only when these three come together, they only they should be called as Mulabandha. And he says, what happens there? Opana pranayoho oikya. So there, opana and prana becomes one. The oneness, the merging, agreeing each other, joining together takes place between opana and pana. And because opana and pana, oikya bhavam happens, because of that, all the result comes. Until and unless that oneness takes place, then of course result won't come either. That's why this particular thing or this particular process have been discussed in different texts also. And do they talk differently? Like, for example, say I would like to say, we have seen Shiva Samhita. How many of you remember Shiva Samhita? Any one of you, at least some trick, some technique, something. Shiva Samhita gone somewhere, okay? Swamiji, that those days you taught, we were enjoying, and especially pandemic time, if I'm right, correct? So we completely forgot, okay? No problem. So there also, it has been discussed. Pada mulena sampidya, guda margeshu yantritam, balat apan akrishya, kramat urdham sucharayet. Kalpitoyam mulabandha, jara marananasana, apana pranayoho aikyam, prakarutyadhikat kalpitam, bandhananena sutaram, yoni mudram प्रसिद्ध्यति सिद्धायां योनि मुद्राया किम्न सिद्ध्यति भूतले बंधस्यास्य प्रसादेन गगने विजितानिलः from Shiva Samhita. And of course, there are many different text talks. Same thing, little bit here and there differences. So the point here is that, so first is pushing through the heel, the Yonisthanam, the Gudamargam. And then what happens? Now you need to pull it up. So there is some type of pressure you need to create, some type of effort you have to put. And once that is pulled, then internally and understanding way, you need to pull up your prana. That's why first thing is we try to understand that how this prana, apana, all these vayus moves. I'll give you one small trick so that I'll stop with this. If you observe your body, generally I get it. Long before anything happens to me, like one day before at least, I have some type of symptoms in my fingers. Sometimes a little finger, sometimes this finger, that one. For no reason, there will be some pain. And each pain is related to some complication tomorrow. And generally, I get the pain one day before. For no reason. So that means the body gives the indication to understand. And I have noticed whenever there is pain in my fingers, differently, it has its own impact later on. And perfectly it goes well. So that means if this happens to me, each one of you must be getting some type of indication long before your body becomes or goes other way around. And here he says that when you have the understanding of this prana and apana, and along with other vayus, then it becomes easier to play. With this, also one more point I can say. Generally, it's a bad way they do it, but in India they do it. Suppose the person is doing, the hiccups comes, and while eating or whatever keeps coming, hiccups, and you make the person to drink water, nothing stops. It happens. Do you know what they do? They will hit. Very strong hit they give, and suddenly, without the knowledge of the person, either generally not in cheek, on the back or somewhere thigh, somewhere, they'll hit or shoulder, real hit they give. And when they give the hit, the person will be shocked. Why I was being beaten up? And you'll be shocked to know the moment the mind goes to the questioning why I was being beaten up. What is the reason? Why happened? What happened? Now the hiccups stops. So the prana, this is all about the prana we have discussed in details earlier. Now when the mind is diverted to other things, now the prana somehow gets balanced. So whether it's right or wrong, don't ask me the question. This is the general process they do it. This is a common habit I have seen in many cases. Like that we do have. So that's why here if you have understanding of all the pranas, then it becomes much more easier and convenient. Then don't ask me, Swamiji, how to understand prana. Then I'll say, look, try to understand my head, okay? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, all of you.